Dale.
So, a project like this has to have risks, and I'm sure that you all have a really good understanding of what those risks are, and I get that you believe that all of these benefits, which are really powerful for the city, outweigh the risk. But I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what those risks are, so we really know what we're voting for. What if the developer falls apart, or, you know, nobody wants to shop there, or nobody wants to live there, or whatever could go wrong? How does that then impact the city?
Thank you, Dale. If you don't mind, I'll take the first shot at that one. And that this is one we've really tried to think very hard about. You know, I know there's talk out there, somewhat derogatorily said at times, that we've hired, you know, that you have a developer mayor in City Hall. I did spend 15 years as a developer, an affordable housing developer, before taking this office, and yes, risk is a major part of development, and we have tried to be very thoughtful here about where are those snakes lying in the grass out there, and how do we make sure the city is protected if something unexpected happens. We were doing that before the events unfolded in Newport, but since then, those events did happen before the city council approved the project, and they, I will say, certainly held the feet to the fire of the administration around those risks as well. Here are the main ways, and there's a lot of detail to answer that question. Here are some of the big ones, at least, that I think we've been pretty thoughtful about. A big thing is it comes down to how the city pays for the public infrastructure, how the city pays for all those new improvements. The pre-development agreement that we have in place with Devonwood says that the city does not make those payments until two things happen. One, that the public infrastructure is built by the developer and built to our standards. And we did it that way for a couple reasons. Like one place, and I know from your background, Dale, I know you've seen this as a construction attorney. The intersection between contracts that can be a place of that interface can be a place of real problems. So the idea here is to have one contractor building out that whole phase one and the blocks right around it, and that there shouldn't be any gaps in that contracting. There shouldn't be any places for things to fall through the gaps. So the developer goes out, builds these infrastructures until it meets our standard, and the city engineer signs off on it as meeting our standards. But that's just part one. Part two is enough of the private improvements need to be in place for the city to clearly have the tax revenue available to it to pay off the TIF debt. That is one of the main ways that cities have gotten in trouble in the past, is they have gone out there and they have done a bunch of public improvements expecting private tax growth to catch up with that. And then something has happened in the economy or something has happened to the project, and those private improvements have not been built on that pace, and suddenly the city is left short. You know, being the city is a good thing. The city, ultimately, usually the cities make themselves whole because the ability to send out property tax bills is a pretty powerful tool. But we don't want to ever be in any situation where we're out over our skis. And this ensures that. And it's quite explicit in the agreement that those two conditions need to be met. Kind of the suspenders, in addition to that belt, if you will, are requirements that the public improvements be competitively bid and transparently bid so that we can see the bids. Secondly, there need to be guarantees, completion guarantees in place so that we know once the public improvements begin that they're going to be completed. There's bonding requirements. It's written pretty tight. There are even restrictions on the private improvements, which we would not normally be in the business of regulating in any way as the city, where there are bonding and guarantee requirements before any demolition begins that the developer must meet, that was specifically targeted around ensuring we don't have kind of a Newport kind of situation where there's a hole in the ground. There are other reasons really that this development should be seen as very different from Newport, that get into the uniqueness with which the financing was done in Newport, where you had this EB5 financing, that it was quite unusual and maybe sort of prone to some abuse. This is all expected to be developed with conventional debt and equity financing, and should be further reassuring that that kind of situation is not going to take place. But those are some of the highlights, at least, in how the city has protected itself here.